Really quick before we start, will you give us a little overview of your group and what you guys do, and somebody from the board or anybody that wants to?
So, kind of what we do?
Yeah.
We're a group. How many of you guys are IS majors? Okay, so we have a lot of IS majors. How many of you are accounting majors? Yay, accountants. Finance majors. There you are. So we're a group, predominantly IS majors. We all have an interest in using SAP. A lot of the students here are pursuing their Trip 10. I would say 100% of them are trying to pursue either an internship or an entry level. How many of you guys are graduating in either December or May? Okay, so quite a few people looking for entry level jobs, internships. But yeah, that's basically what we do is we learn how companies are using SAP, and we're kind of looking for opportunities in some of that field.
So who has like a year or two left that would be looking for an internship? Okay. So about half and half. Okay, so we are both from, my name is Danielle Decker. I'm from our advisory practice, and we're going to be presenting primarily on advisory because that's what we figured you guys would be interested in more, but we will tailor our presentation to talk about whatever you guys want.
So my name is Celine Elos, manager out of the Detroit office, part of the advisory practice, and specifically the risk transformation practice, which we'll talk about a little bit. I'm SAP focused as well.
So the first few slides are just going to provide a little bit of a general overview, and then we'll get more into advisory as a whole. But this is our practice, or not just our practice, but the firm in general. 190,000 people globally with 25.8 billion in revenue.
So from my standpoint, why I like working for a global firm is you can all hear my accent. I'm from France originally, so it's nice to know that if I ever want to go back to France, it will be easy for me to transition within the firm. That's one opportunity. And then just be able to meet on a day-to-day basis people who, a very diverse set of people come from all across the world. We've had people transfer recently from Australia. I'm working a lot with our Spanish team lately, so you have a lot of international travel opportunities, whether on your projects or for specific internal projects within the firm. So I really like the fact that we're a global firm, and I think it really adds a lot of value and interest in my day-to-day job.
Yeah, and it's very important from our client basis that we have a very diverse group of people. Because, just on my last project, I was working with people from the client side from Mexico and Europe, and from the EY side, there was a UK counterpart. So I would say pretty much on every job, whether it's people that are diverse in the US, working in the US, or people from different offices that you're working with, just on a Germany audit that's being performed in a different country while you're working on the US audit. So these are our four primary service lines: advisory, assurance, tax, transactions. I know generally when you think accounting, you think just tax. Everybody thinks I do taxes, and I can't even do my own taxes. So it's not true. So advisory, like we said, is the group that we're from. We can talk to assurance, tax, and transactions, but it sounds like most people would be mainly interested in advisory anyways. But I know there's a few accounting majors. I'm actually an accounting information systems major, so I can speak to both, but I went to the advisory route.
Yeah, same for me. I have a dual major, so accounting and information system. And I decided to focus more on the information system side, but I use my accounting every day at clients as we're working through their processes. So the background has been interesting. So to the point of the service lines, right, when you choose to hire into the firm or when you choose to do an internship with the firm, they're going to put you in one of the 4 service lines. And even when you're interviewing for specific positions that are already within each of those 4 service lines. So you need to know which one you want to go for. Again, as we said, it sounds like a lot of you would be mainly interested in advisory just because the sheer number of people who are from the IS major in the room, but the other practices for the few of you who are within an accounting major or a finance major, you may want to look at insurance or tax as well. On a day-to-day basis, when we're working within teams, we often work with practitioners from the other practices, but usually you just pick one and you stick to it.
Personally, I interned with EY. I've been with EY for 4 years, but during my internship, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just kind of got placed in a bucket. I had the idea, I just want to work for Big Four, and I'll figure it out later. But I did, but I actually ended up liking what I wanted to go into, and I feel like school is getting more focused towards these groups, like this group that actually, this wasn't around when I was at Central, so it's nice that you can already kind of tailor to what you want to go into.
So this slide, its attempt is really to try and define what advisory is all about. And I think, the tagline here, helping clients grow, protect, and optimize their businesses, it sounds very vague and very diverse. So when I looked at this slide earlier, I was, what am I going to talk about? I think what the idea of the slide, it wants to convey that advisory is very diverse, and your job is never going to be the same from one day to another. Some examples of projects that I've been working on vary a lot in scope and size. So, one of my recent clients, I'm helping them with optimizing their process as it relates to sales commissions. So they have a number of sales representatives, and they want to know how to pay those sales representatives, how to calculate their commissions, right? So I'm helping them with defining what the process should be and what controls they should have in that process to make sure that payments are fair for their sales force, right? That's one project. The other project I'm working on, I'm implementing an SAP IT systems, one of the products that SAP has. So it's very technical in nature, very far away from the first one, which is more, business process focused. The second one, on a day-to-day basis, I talk with IT and, asking them if their servers have enough space to host my application and things like that. So the two are kind of day and night, and that's what makes advisory interesting, I guess, is that you have a lot of diversity in the types of work that you're going to do.
Yeah, and right now just the last couple of weeks I've been working on an SAP audit, and just through that audit I've recognized so many areas that the company needs help with. I mean, they're a multi-billion-dollar company, but just identifying areas that you can pull in an advisory to help them everywhere across their client.
So this one is more to show, we've seen the first slide on the number of people on the first slide, and it's to show a comparison. This is just like with the lens of advisory, where 31,000 people internationally, 5.8 billion in revenue. From a size of it, in the Americas, about 11,000 people, right? So it's a fairly large group. If we go back to the other slide on the numbers, we have about 55,000 people overall in the Americas, and we're looking at 1/5 of it being advisory. One thing that's important to note too is that advisory is our fastest growing practice out of the 4 branches that we had at the beginning. So that's really part of the firm strategy to expand in that space more and more, and it's an exciting time to be part of advisory just because of that. My practice, my small practice, when I started with the risk transformation practice within EY maybe 3 years ago, we were a group of 40. That's very small. And now internationally we are about 300. We're very highly specialized in what we do. That's why we're a small group like that. But in 3 years, we're like almost 10 times bigger than 3 years ago. So it's been interesting to see it grow. We have a lot of pockets within advisory that are just like that. it also creates kind of, from my standpoint, an entrepreneurship type of mindset, because when you start in a practice that's so small, like 30 people, and you grow it to maybe 300 people, you kind of are able to decide on the strategy of the practice a little bit and say where you think it would be good for it to go. So it's interesting to be part of that. On the other hand, Daniel's practice is so much bigger, and I don't know how many people are in your practice exactly, but out of the 11,000, you're probably a third of it, right?
Yeah, so our group started off more of, so I'm on the risk assurance side, so I work on IT audits, but I also work on projects like Solene. So I spent 2.5 years almost working on an SAP implementation review. So you can do a lot of things in my practice, and it's growing so much because you have assurance and tax where you're kind of doing the same. You have the same clients, you have your audits, and they're very big and they bring in a lot of revenue, but they're repeat audits, so there's not as much you can sell to them. So you have advisory on the other hand, where the opportunities are endless, and we just acquired companies that specialize in actually implementing SAP, which is a area that we weren't in before, and we're getting there. So we have endless opportunities.
So this is the breakdown of advisory and the different service lines that we have at EY. So again, when you're hiring in or interviewing, you're interviewing probably for advisory, but then at some point you're going to end up in one of those practices. We kind of split them in two main groups. The first one is performance improvement, and the second group is risk, right? So from a performance improvement perspective, usually those service lines are focused on trying to optimize businesses. Like they go in and they take like business processes or specific cycles within companies, and they try to optimize that process and make it, better. From a risk perspective, it's all about managing risk, right? So you go into companies, you assess where their risks are, and you're trying to put controls to make sure that those risks never materialize. The two really go hand in hand, and on a day-to-day basis, I'm part of, so that we fit in here. I'm part of risk, and I'm part of risk transformation. Danielle is part of risk, but she's part of risk assurance, right? But on a day-to-day basis, in my teams, I always have people that are from the PI, performance improvement team, in order to come together and have both point of views.
So right now the client that we were both just on, they're bringing in people from PI to do data analytics work. We have people in risk that do data analytics, but the PI portion goes in, I guess, at a more broad level and tries to transform your business using data analytics. That's just one example of PI, but they do much more.
Now, if we look at it with an SAP lens, because we're also here to talk about SAP today, under performance improvement, IT advisory would be where EY is starting to get into the space of implementing SAP. We haven't done a lot of that in the past, but we're getting into that space a little bit like the IBM and the Accenture of the world. And that would fall probably under PI IT advisory, right? Now, from an SAP standpoint, you have a lot of business cycles within SAP. So if you're looking at, let's say, an order-to-cash cycle, which is all about when a customer puts in an order and how are you, fulfilling that order. Well, if the team was to go in and to try to improve that order-to-cash process within SAP at a specific company, that would probably be a performance improvements team within the customer bucket here at the top, right? If you're going to do an IT audit, so there's a financial team that audits a company, the company has SAP in place, you need an IT audit team to support the financial audit. That would probably be part of risk assurance, right? That's how the SAP component come in. My practice, risk transformation, is split into two buckets, one that focuses on Oracle, the other one that focuses on SAP. I'm actually focusing on SAP. And what we do within risk and transformation is often controls optimization. So we come in at companies that have a set of financial controls in place. They also have SAP in place, and sometimes they are not deriving the full potential from SAP in terms of looking at controls. You can automate a lot of your controls in SAP. So we do a lot of that. So in each of those buckets, you already have SAP professionals, but they all do like a little bit of different consulting as it relates to SAP, depending in which practice they are on. But at the end of the day, I work on a day-to-day basis with a lot of PI professionals, with a lot of risk assurance professionals like Danielle. So you'll always end up working with some of those other service lines.
Yeah, I fit pretty much into, although I'm considered risk assurance, right now I'm doing internal audit work. We were doing internal audit work with our SAP implementation, and so that was technically risk transformation, and then I do risk assurance because I do IT audits externally and internally. And if anybody has questions while we're going, just interrupt us. We like it to be as interactive as it can.
All right, so this slide is really an attempt at trying to take the practices, the service lines we've just seen, and put them into three buckets. I don't like this slide either because I really think that one service line is always acting in each of the three buckets, but I guess each of them has kind of their main component. So bucket number one, right, it comes up front. That's about developing strategies and helping companies throughout any change that they may have. From an SAP standpoint, again, that's probably where you're going to define your program management for SAP. So when a company decides to implement SAP, it's not a small endeavor. I mean, it's usually millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, very often billion. You reach that number, right? So you need all of these buckets here to help with the SAP implementation. You need program management to help manage the risk of the project overall. You know, the timeline of the project, the costs, and the various risks. You need people and organizational change, which is another service line we have to help with, okay, what does SAP mean to your end user? You know, from on a daily basis, they might be doing something in spreadsheet today, but tomorrow their world is going to change completely with SAP. What does that mean to them, and how do you help them through that journey? Risk transformation, again, my service line, is really helping very often from a control standpoint or from a governance, risk and compliance standpoint, setting the strategy for controls as it relates to SAP. The second bucket here is about implementing technologies. As we said, going back to SAP, from an SAP standpoint, EY is starting to get in the space of implementing SAP, the ERP, like enterprise resource planning. But SAP has a lot of different products that you are probably not seeing on a day-to-day basis today, but we're doing implementation of those smaller products on a day-to-day basis. So my latest project is to implement SAP GRC, which is stands for SAP Governance, Risk and Compliance, and it's an SAP tool that helps with controlling your risks and monitoring various controls that you may have in place from a financial standpoint. So we do certainly implementations of SAP products a lot today already, not necessarily the ERP yet. Bucket number 3, EY optimizes processes and drive business outcomes. So this one, you find a lot of the PI, performance improvement service lines like supply chain, customer, and finance. Those teams really very often come in to help a specific process within the company run better and faster, and that's what they do. But again, you know, as any professional, you're going to play in those 3 buckets. I don't like categorizing here because you're really going to, on a day-to-day basis, to help from a strategic standpoint upfront, to help implement technologies that are going to support processes and to optimize processes.
I mean, the PI practices stands for process improvement, but we're there every day to help our clients improve their processes. Whether that's what we're hired for, that's what we end up doing, providing that kind of value. So these are, so they change our names all the time. I mean, this is new to me. BAP, TAP, and RAP. These are our new advisory programs. So since we're moving into this more consulting world, they're changing our programs to mean, so BAP, Business Advisor Program. So that's, what do we say, that's like more of your financial side. And then your TAP would be Celine, so more of the technical SAP implementations and transformations, control transformations. And then RAP would be more of my work, but I also dabble in the TAP. So even if you guys start at EY, they're probably going to change their names by then. So don't be confused by the names. It's advisory overall. So as far as what we're looking for from Central is mainly in the RAP bucket. So I know we have, I'll segue into our internships and our full-time hires, but they did extend the deadline for our internships and our full-times to today. So raise of hands, how many of you went to meet the recruiters and talk to some EY folks? Okay, a handful. Anybody come to our office yesterday? All right, okay. So you probably heard that, but for everyone else that's interested in EY and an internship or full-time, the process for that is submitting on the Career Services website, if that's still what it's called, and then also EY's website. And we can talk more about that afterwards, but I just wanted to let you know that I think most of our internships and full-time are going to fit into the RAP. So I can definitely talk to you guys about what that would entail, but likely it will entail across all three, because just because you're in RAP, which could entail IT audit, internal audit, doesn't mean that you won't be doing SAP implementation type work.
So a couple of things to add to that, right? A couple of you already came and handed over like paper resume, and it's a great idea. But really, your resume is only considered if you post it on the career website. So make sure you do that before tonight if you're interested in an internship or a position, full-time position at EY. And then those categories. So we've talked about a number of categories before. We've talked about the service lines, and you may wonder how does this relate to this, right? These are the categories that are important to you if you want to apply for EY, because they'll put you in one of the three buckets initially. And then that will evolve in you being a part of one of the service lines that we saw earlier. But initially, the idea is to have a rotating program so that you can get to see as much as the firm as possible, as many of the service lines as possible. So you usually choose one of the three buckets, and then within that bucket, you get staffed onto different projects that are going to touch many of the service lines that we talked about. And again, this is just an initial, maybe inclination or an initial preference that you have. But since you're going to get in the first couple of years, 2 or 3 years, right? In the first couple of years, you're going to get to work on projects that are really across different service lines. It will be easier for you to decide what you like, what you don't like, which space you want to play in, what might be a better fit for you. So that's really the idea with the advisory consultant program, is for you to be able to have, during those first 2 or 3 years, as many experiences as possible to be able to pick the right fit for you at the end.
And just because you pick one of these doesn't mean you're stuck there. I mean, during my internship, I interned with people that the year before had interned in insurance and they didn't like it, or they interned in risk, or ITRA, that's what it used to be called, and didn't like it, so the next year they did assurance. So you're not stuck if you are like, this isn't for me. You can always move around in the firm. We have a lot of people that jump from assurance as full-time to tax, or tax to advisory. It just depends on your interests.
Yeah, so when I hired in about 3 years ago, I was in the wrap buckets, but today I'm in the tap bucket, so I moved over. And then I work with Danielle a lot, although she's wrap, she works with me on a lot of tap types of projects. Right? So it's just an initial preference, and then
The first 2 years I did strictly rep, and I was on a lot of clients with SAP, and so I wanted to do more technical or learn more technical things. So I moved into type of TAP projects, but I still work on both. I think I'm ideal because I have 50-50 probably split between my clients.
And again, at this point, like we're looking, I mean, from a fit perspective, with the program that you're going through and your experience here at CMU, the best fit is probably here on the right side.
So this is our industries that we work in. When you start or when you intern, you'll probably work across all different industries, and there are areas that do work across all industries. We're starting to work more towards sectorizing, so just working on automotive, but not always just being stuck to automotive. If you want to work on more, you can. But personally, I work on automotive, I work on oil and gas. I used to have some healthcare and some banking clients. So right now I'm more automotive in oil and gas, but I've been all across the board. And you kind of get a feel for what type of industry you like more. Obviously, if you enjoy working in SAP, you're most likely going to be automotive manufacturing. We don't really have a lot of healthcare or banking clients on SAP. But that's kind of where I landed.
Yeah. So for my part, my main clients right now are technology and manufacturing. But I did quite a bit of oil and gas with Daniel and some financial services as well. The good thing about trying to get deep into a specific industry sector is that you really learn the client environment better. You're better able to meet their needs, right? So if we're looking at Detroit, and I don't know if a lot of you are looking to be in the Detroit area later on, but if we're looking at Detroit, a lot of our clients are within the automotive space, obviously, and a lot in healthcare as well. Those would be the two sectors that stick out around Detroit, I would think. Again, from an SAP perspective, as Daniel was saying, SAP is really implemented more at companies that are manufacturing, automotive type of companies. You don't see them play as much in the healthcare space. You don't see them play as much in the financial services space. So if you're looking to be a consultant in SAP, you're probably going to end up in those more manufacturing type of sectors.
Unless you're very technical in one area, then I mean a lot of Soline's group gets pulled into any type of client just because they have that niche in procure to pay or a certain area. So it's hard to be an IT specialist that knows SAP well and also sector focused because it's just too many specializations. Yeah. So a lot of SAP folks actually play in a lot of different sectors because they're already so specialized in SAP or within IT that they can't add more specialization to it. But for all of you in here, having SAP as a skill is great for, any company that either has SAP or the Big Four, any companies that audit it, look at it, consult on it. People coming out of, I'm from Central, so I am a very big advocate for recruiting at Central, but we are known for our students that actually have SAP experience. So when you come onto the job and you're a brand new staff or you're an intern and you know more than your senior, it just looks awesome. It's like, go Central.
Ernst and Young won the championship, right?
Yes, we did, but we...
Pat you guys on the back.
Yeah, we did, but we went from last to first, so...
Great direction to go.
Comeback kids, yeah. So we'll be back again this year. Trying to hang on to that title.
Absolutely. Who's going to be the mentor? Are you going to be
I'm sure it'll be me again. Yeah.
All right.
Hopefully I had some good kids.
Yeah. All right. Where's the trophy at?
in Dan's office.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
It's not small, so good thing he has a big office. So this is what we're looking for. This is another slide that's kind of not important. I mean, it is, but we look for lots of things. I mean, my personal opinion is the desire to learn, because, I mean, especially even in SAP, you never feel like you know everything, because you don't. There's just a lot to learn, and people that are willing to teach you. The reason I have a specialization a little bit is, I would say, because of Celine. Celine's been on the last project with me a couple of years teaching me what she knew. So that's, for me, most important. Great.
No, it doesn't really matter exactly, which degree you're from, whether it's accounting, MIS, or another type of degree, finance, right? We do have a lot of diversity in the type of work we do at EY. So even if today we focus mainly on SAP and advisory, because that's the crowd we have in the audience, but for maybe finance major or accounting major, there's also the assurance side and the tax side and the transaction side, which we haven't talked to. So there's a lot of diversity in the type of work at EY. It's mainly a fit on people that we're looking for, and I would say the desire to learn is probably one of the most important.
And just because it's advisory doesn't mean you need to be technical. I was not technical at all when I started. I'm still not extremely technical, but I've learned a lot just through the trainings. I always tell the interns and the staff, we don't expect you to know anything. I mean, have common sense, but not, be super technical and try to solve problems the first day. So it's a lot of on-the-job training every day.
And that's also why we have that consulting program that lasts 2 or 3 years, is really to give you the opportunity to learn on different projects, to experience different things, and form an opinion on where you want to be in 3 years.
So this slide kind of wants us to get at what our interview process is like. So I can't remember if does this say it's different for full-time versus interns? I'm not sure. I believe it's the same, but it was a little different than when I interned. I interviewed, I think, with after I interviewed on campus, that was with one person, then I came back to the office and interviewed with a few people. Now they are the same as far as on campus. You'll do a pre-night dinner where you get to meet, and that is very, very important. So if you get an interview with EY, go to that dinner, because it's the best way to talk to your interviewer, your greeters, who are going to all give feedback on you, and you guys get to feel us out to see if you like us and you want to work with us. So it's a great thing to go to. And then now there's writing samples and behavioral-based interviews. That's just
Before you go to that slide,
yeah.
when you're done with it, I want to have a comment.
Yeah, sure. And then the case study is, I think you graded these, so you can speak more to these.
The case study is really often they just give you question.
It's not to it's not a test. It's basically just to see how you think.
They give you a small abstract of what the company does and how you could help the company, and you just need to go through and explain where you could help, or go through and answer a couple of specific questions. It's not meant to be technical. It's really meant to see what your thought process is, your logic is, and it's meant to evaluate your writing skills.
Yeah. So don't get turned off by, I have to do a case study, I don't really want to interview. It's not us that chooses that you guys have to do a case study. It's HR or whoever comes up with these things. But it is a good process. It's just trying to figure out how you think. But there's not a right or wrong answer. I mean, even when grading these things, it's not.
Do they write a response? put a written response together in a case study, or?
So the writing sample is really where you're going to write a response, right? The case study is really more based, it's interview based, so you get time to prepare, you write what you want to write, but you don't have to hand in the paper, it's more like talking through it.
We talk about this in our business communication course. We really are putting together expected outcomes from the class that they are able to use what's called OABC, opening, agenda, body, closing. In other words, organize your writing sample response in this fashion so you isn't helter-skelter in writing. So it's something we're teaching and talking about, and I love that it's being asked for as an interview process, but so it really does reinforce what we're doing in the classroom, saying, okay, there's more to it than just getting out of this class and going to the next.
Yeah. And those classes are very valuable because although you might have a tax class that you never use again, I mean, those classes will always be valuable no matter what field you're going into. And it just forms your writing style. And I don't know if anybody's ever taken the information system class with Bromley 370. A brutal class, but it's very good actually for teaching you how to write.
Yeah, we would appreciate it.
Yeah.
One of the other things I point out was the interview-based, in a social setting, in a dinner.
Oh yeah, pre-night
luncheon,
dinner.
yeah. Pre-night dinner, as you call
Yep. And even when you come back to the office, they do I think they still do a pre-night dinner. They actually have activities and stuff. It's a pretty nice.
We on campus here do etiquette sessions for students. Right now there's one coming up. You go to career services. You can sign up. The first 70 people who sign up have a free dinner, and it's sponsored by a number of companies. And they'll do it over here in the University Center, cloth napkins, cloth tablecloths, fine dining.
Yeah,
They're going to talk about etiquette prior to the dinner, at the dinner, after the dinner. So it's really those who have the entire package. And you're reinforcing that here, saying it's more than just some courses you took at CMU. It's more than just, I got a degree in MSIS, as a graduate student, or an undergraduate degree in BSBA, IS. It's more than that. They want to see the whole package, that you can hit the ground running professionally. So if you have a chance, graduate students, you're welcome to participate in that etiquette dinner on campus. Again, the first 70 are free. So just to reinforce, it's great. I'd love to have that slide.
Yeah, that's a great point. Even any firm that you interview with, a lot of them will have dinners or lunches or bowling events. Those type of events. Meet the recruiters. Go to meet the recruiters. Talk to the career fair. There's still a career fair up here. Those are the best ways to get connected to us.
Okay.
So 2 points to regarding what we've talked about. So regarding the writing assignments and learning communication skills on how to have, an opening statement, a body. Implement a product, but you're not going to help as much on the business process side, optimizing different business processes. And I really feel that's where you come in, is to be able to have that whole package, both technical and on the business side as well. If you look at us as compared to the other big four, our advisory practice is really growing and it's out there right now. So from my standpoint, I used to work for KPMG before EY, and one of the reasons why I made that switch is just because I wanted a bigger, greater advisory practice, and I wanted to become more of a consultant. So.
And to her point about us doing more at clients, the last client we've been on, Deloitte and another implementer were there at the beginning. They've since rolled off, and we've been there since the beginning. We're still going additional projects that might not relate to the beginning project, but now we're getting into data analytics. So, and one point that's not on here, and it's not really about our awards, but it's one thing that I love about EY is how much we give back. So just last Friday we had an EY Connect Day, which is every single individual takes the day off and goes out in the community and does something. So I was at Boys and Girls Club, and we painted blinds in the parking lot. There were people at food banks. So everyone, whether it was Friday or another day, takes a day out of their workday to go volunteer. And then there's so many opportunities just outside of EY, even being affiliated to EY, that you can get involved. I do a lot of work with United Way because I like that kind of work, but you can do whatever you want and EY will get you there.
For me, I like planting trees. There's an association that's called the Greening of Detroit in Detroit, and they try to revive trees in poor neighborhoods. So that's what I do. You get a good workout.
Yeah, and then we have a happy hour for the entire office, so it's awesome.
So, that was obviously kind of the sales speech about what is EY, what do we do, what makes a good fit for EY, and I'm trying to get you interested in EY and see if honestly you'd like working there potentially. And not everyone is interested, right? So it's also for you to kind of decide where you want to be and where you want to work, and it's not necessarily EY, I mean, you understand. But one of the things we wanted to do after this sales pitch is really talk a little bit more about case studies and what we've done at clients to give you a flavor of what we do on a day-to-day basis within our jobs, just so that you have an idea. We have 3 of those. I don't know that we will need to walk through all 3 of those, but this first one here. So the project was an SAP transformation at a large automotive manufacturer. So from an SAP perspective, that automotive manufacturer, they were trying to implement SAP, right? Their goal was to implement SAP for several reasons, which are listed here in very small prints. But one of them was to try to globally standardize their processes. Another one was to get better controls in place. They wanted to also optimize resource allocation, so reduce their costs from a resource perspective, and reduce their IT costs as well. Again, as I said, an SAP implementation is several hundred millions of dollars visually. And this specific project, the way that EY came in initially was just to help and assist with the controls. So whenever you have a big SAP implementation, your financial controls are going to change quite a bit, and you're going to have an environment that switches a little bit from a very manual environment where you do a lot of things in spreadsheets, and then the system does a lot of that for you. You need to make sure the system is configured appropriately to do it right. So that's what we did. We came in, we looked at things like a 3-way match in the procure-to-pay process, for instance. So, in the past, a company may be matching invoice, so maybe matching a purchase order to an invoice and a goods receipt manually to make sure that they all kind of match and that you're really receiving from your vendor what you thought you bought from them. A lot of that manual work can be eliminated once you put a system in place like SAP, because it's going to do that 3-way match automatically for you. That's a control point that's changing. You go from a manual review to something that the system does. But how do you know that the system is doing the trick? Somebody needs to look into it. Right? So that's what we did. That's how we came in. And so in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the overall SAP implementation, that consulting piece that we did on controls was a fairly small piece, right? But then you start talking to more finance people, IT people, creating relationships at the client, and we really grew it into something more. So as part of the controls, we saw that they were having issues with their security. A lot of things that were recurring as we were looking at their control was, really, this person has access to something and they shouldn't. That's not right. So to give you an example, right, segregation of duties within the procure-to-pay process again. If I'm an employee within a company and I can create a vendor in my system and say, this is vendor A, I'm going to be able to buy goods from them. But I can also make a payment to that vendor in the system. What prevents me from creating a vendor who's just me, under my name and my address, and sending checks to myself? You don't want that happening. So you want to put in place segregation of duties, right? Those were part of the controls we were looking at, making sure that that segregation of duties in the different business processes existed. We noticed that it wasn't the case, and we explained to the client that they were having issues with their security. now all of a sudden we're doing all of the security for them. So as they are implementing SAP, we're looking at their roles and making sure the right people have access to the right things to do their job, but not more than that. So we started like with a small portion of that overall SAP implementation, and now we're building security, which is a large portion of an SAP implementation. So we really grew at that client, and we're doing more and more interesting things every day. One of the things that I like about those types of projects that I like a lot is you often do workshops with the clients, with different people within their organization. So if you're looking at the procure-to-pay process, because it was my examples, you may be doing a workshop with 30 people from the accounts payable team, for instance, and asking them to walk through their process as it is today, walk through their process as it will be tomorrow once SAP is in place, trying to see the differences, trying to see the weaknesses, and trying to optimize that process. That really makes for an interesting day-to-day job. So that was one example. Here we were trying to depict a little bit the interaction between PI and risk, and what we're trying to say with this is that PI, or performance improvement practice, was leading the project and risk was supporting the project. So that's an example of interaction between the two practices. Any questions on this one? Yeah.
I just wondering, like, so your whole team, because of building this relationship with Winter, you give not just the access control and the security design, you give kind of all the business process as well.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone is like, because I mean, your team, everyone has all the knowledge about these things, or like in between, kind of going to the workshop. Or
That's the beauty of it, right? I came in, I had knowledge on controls. I'm not a security person, right? But EY advisors, we have security people. We just brought in security people, right? And that's how it happens. I mean, there's obviously then a lot of knowledge transfer through that process. I learned a lot on security, which I didn't do much of, right? But the beauty of it is because we have so many practitioners within advisory, right? About 11,000 within the US, you always find someone who is standing by us, right? If you don't, there's always subcontracting available. We do a little bit of that, but that's actually in very specific instances.
You can usually find somebody that knows something about it. So that's how usually most of our projects start. They'll start with a little piece, and it'll be like phase one. So it'll be for 6 months, and then if they like us and we're performing, then it'll roll out to the year, and then multiple years.
So the example you just gave us, how big was the team? Like the EY team?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. When we started with the controls piece, I would say we were about 10 people, right? When we started on security, it was more like 30 people for the security piece, so 10 plus 30 at this point, 40. And then, you know, we have additional components to that, like project management and things like that. That's about. So when you look at an SAP implementation and you think about the size of the team, usually we're the firm implementing the SAP ERP, usually they would have a couple hundred people, right? So that's kind of a good size from a consulting perspective if you're implementing SAP. We were doing only the security piece, and that was probably 30 of those 200 people. Yes.
At each project, any implementation, you're going to have multiple hands in the pot. I guess you have, at our last one, you have Accenture, you have HCL, you have Deloitte, we had PwC and EY. The only person that was not was KPMG. So across every project, that's just how it usually is. Any other questions?
All right. Number 2. So this one was about, again, controls for an SAP-enabled business transformation at a science and engineering company. It's similar in nature, and then I let Daniel talk about the type of projects he does as well. But this one is a bit similar. We were coming in to help with controls. We were coming in a little bit earlier. The post team was, which was interesting because at that point we got a say in really how the system was being implemented, and we were able to impact business processes and say, we really don't like how you're configuring your three-way hatch here. You're saying that 5% of the dollar amounts, like if your invoice is within 5% of your initial purchase order, the transaction can go through and you don't look at it. We think it's too risky. We would like you to change that configuration to 3% or things like that. Because we came in earlier, we had a lot more say into what the business process should look like and how they would improve on it. And it's so much easier to do it upfront versus after the fact, once everything has been implemented and you're just pointing fingers and saying this is broken, we need to do something about it. Right? It's easier to be there upfront. So that's why I like this project a lot. We were there earlier. If you look at how they put it, the company was looking for a partner for their finance SAP journey. So they looked at implementing SAP as a journey. It's going to change everything within the company, right? We, the finance team, need somebody to help us with that, right? And that's how they picked it, right? And that's why we were there so early to be able to help them through the process, because from the beginning, the company recognized that implementing SAP is such a large endeavor that they needed somebody from day one to help them through the process. A lot of time we're just coming to fix things, and it's much more difficult.
I'll talk about what we do from an audit side. So from audit clients, there's not as much you can do. So from Celine's clients, those were mainly what we call Channel 2 clients. So they're not external audit clients. On external audit clients, you can only do so many things. So for an audit I'm currently on, since I've been up there for 4 years now, we always are trying to find things that we can help them with, but we're limited in our capacity. So we've done security risk assessments for them, going in and talking to process owners and saying, what are your biggest fears? And you'd be surprised to hear how candid they are with you about issues that they see. And their biggest problem 4 years ago was SAP, and they're still on a very, very old version. Well, they just went and tried to implement it, and it bombed. So from that area, we were involved, but very little, because we couldn't do much. We came from an external point, and we're doing a post-phase review, showing them, areas that we thought were going to be risky, and they were. So now we're going in and saying, these are things that you need to be looking for from this review that you need to consider going forward. I mean, they've like Celine was saying, these are multi-million-dollar investments, and they just spend it all. So going forward, we're trying to help them say, we can't do this for you, but we can show you ways in which you can do it yourself.
I have a question, so if it is that kind of a big project, so generally all the companies do is they have a system which is already in place. So they will keep running that system, and they want to implement a new system. So they'll keep it stuck in a testing phase, right? So suddenly they cannot replace the old system.
Yeah.
So how is that possible?
So for this particular case, they were trying to move all of their master data and 2 years of transactional data in a 48-hour downtime. And the amount of data they were trying to move just wasn't going to happen. They ended up breaking their container, and they just had to call it off. The steering committee got involved, and we're just like, no, this is done.
Let's roll on that.
Yeah. But it was a told you so kind of thing. So they pushed off IT for so long and said, a lot of companies you'll see are just, it doesn't make us money, but it does in the long run, because if it doesn't operate, your entire business goes down. So in that case, they had to stop it and try to build up their current environment of SAP before they can continue the project, because the current environment was not strong enough. So, but yes, to your point, they were going to basically stop production for 48 hours. Nothing was going to occur, and they would move into the other one. They would probably let their old one run in parallel for a little bit, and then once they had comfort that everything was on the new environment, they would retire the role.
So now that's worst case scenario. Very often we see companies just reduce their scope and say, okay, let's do this first, and then they do second wave or second release, and then the third one, and so forth. And that's how they go through their risk. It's not as common to see a complete stop like this.
And where will that new system be? Will that be built in-house, or is there
Yeah.
any development team for that?
So they had a bunch of players. They had SAP, they had Deloitte, they had, I think, IBM in there too. So they were building it in-house, but just couldn't get there in the time frame that they needed to. But that was, it had been going for, at that point, 8 months with that entire team. So I mean, that's a huge hit to take. It will, the project will commence, but they're already out so much money because they delayed their going to a newer version earlier.
Just one more question,
Yep.
one final question. Like, if EY takes the responsibility, like, we are here to help you for mitigating your risk or something like that. So, like, who bears the responsibility if it is a success or a failure?
It's always the business. I mean, the company is bringing in these companies to help them, but, and I'm sure they'll point fingers at somebody for that failure, but it always will lie on the business. And a problem with that client is they didn't have a lot of people at the client that knew SAP very well, so they were bringing in people that they thought would help, but it just, you know, it's poor planning. So. But yes, some contractors were fired. Yes. Should we just open it up for questions now? Or? Yeah, I think so. Probably almost an hour or so.
Yeah, that's good, because a lot of them have commitments going on.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, any other questions unrelated to slides?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be about SAP. It can be about SAP.
So just because a lot of students here, they're pursuing a church plan or in some sort of SAP coursework. So what are some things that they can work towards to put on their resume where you guys will look through it and go, okay, they have this on the resume, I definitely at least want to talk to this person.
Yeah, so Central, like I said, has the advantage that you guys are, a lot of you are pursuing your SAP for advisory. I mean, assurance and tax might not look at that as much, but there are tax individuals that work with SAP as well. So SAP, any type of involvement in that, this group is great. Any organizations, I guess one thing that I wish people would have told me earlier in college is get involved in groups as early as you can, because you get in front of these companies, you start meeting them. It's just, I see people like that I saw as a freshman that they're just too young to intern, and you see them 3 years later and you're like, absolutely, I'm going to refer you. So that's fine.
And when she says get involved with group guys, it means paying your dues and being actually part of the group.
Yes, not being an honorary member.
Not showing up for pizza. My second question is, you know, especially as being an entry-level hire, you're kind of coming in and you have that base kind of ground for, like, you know, knowledge, but really I think a lot of your education at professional level grows once you get into it. So as an entry-level hire, what kind of like training opportunities do you guys have as far as like classes you can take or certifications you can pursue or anything like that?
Yeah, so certifications, I have my CISA. Some people have their CPA. Advisory doesn't require you to have your CPA. So some people think of that as a bonus. But
We do require a certification, though.
By the time you're a manager.
By the time you're a manager.
But as far as training on the job, you'll have on the job your staff and seniors coaching you. But we also have for staff like a pretty robust 2.5 week training now. It's orientation and then a couple weeks in Atlanta. It always changes. It was Chicago before that. So that teaches you. It's getting a lot better. Teaching you walkthrough meetings, what to expect. Basically, what to expect in your first week our first year. And then every year we're required to have a certain amount of CPEs, continuing professional education. So every year pretty much everyone goes to a couple weeks of training in Atlanta or wherever it is during that year.
And that initial training is actually a lot of soft skills,
Yeah.
How to go to a meeting, how to present yourself, how to have good writing communications. And then the trainings become more and more technical every year as you specialize. We're not expecting people fresh out of campus to have like deep technical skills. That would be unreasonable. So what's interesting about EY too is you can really choose year over year which trainings you're going to take. So there's what we call a counselor relationship. So as you get into the firm, you assign a counselor, and think of that person as a career advisor of sorts, right? They are going to help you navigate the firm. They are going to help you with your performance cycles and everything. And one of the things they help you is define the training plan that is right for you. So year over year, EY is sending you to trainings, but you want to make sure that those participate to your career and are making your career move in the right direction. For me, I wanted to become more technical, so they sent me to SAP classes, and I really appreciated that. Those are hard to get to because their SAP classes are really expensive. So, if you decide that you really want to make a career out of SAP, that's what they'll do. They'll send you to an SAP class. If not, they'll send you to other types of class, whether internal, whether with other vendors. It just depends on what you want to do, right?
Because my practice, it's not common for you to be going to these SAP trainings because they are so expensive. But because I was working on SAP projects where I wanted to get more involved, I got the partner approval to get sent. So that was lucky for me, but it's possible. Any other?
This question is kind of towards like events that's happening, so like meet the recruiters and like the career fair. What do you guys want to hear from a student who, like when we talk to you guys? Like, what would you guys want to hear from us?
So for me, more than what I want to hear is I want to see if the person is, interested, eager to learn. I want to see how they present themselves. Like executive presence counts, right? Communication skills. It's not about skill set. It's not about which classes you've taken. It's more about what is your interest, if any why. Why are you interested? What, do you think makes EY different from other places too, right? Because that's how we'll know whether you're a good fit or not. And just that ability to communicate, a very open attitude, and eager to learn.
And we know you can be nervous. I'm sure I was nervous when I went through the process, but and I know that there's a lot of companies there. Try to not, whether you're going up to Deloitte, don't tell them you want to work for EY because I've had candidates come up to me and be like, "Oh, I just really want to work for Deloitte." And I'm like, "Cool, they're over there." Just be aware. Anything else? Yeah.
What are all the things you expect us to see in the resume?
I guess the more relevant, a lot of people don't, I wouldn't say a lot, but some people don't work while they're in school because they're focusing on school. So what other things are you doing? If you're not doing, if you're not working, I expect to see some type of organization involvement, community service, something that shows that you're doing something other than just going to class every day and just getting straight A's. Because although grades are important, I would much rather talk to a person with a good personality that just wants to learn than a person with a 4-point that has no personality. Yeah.
One more. Could you see an example of project for executive in the oil and gas sector?
What was that?
Could you cite an example of the project you've executed in the oil and gas?
Oh.
So, one project we were recently at that both Daniel and I together was an oil and gas client. And, one of the things we did, they were going through their SAP implementation. We were helping their internal audit group try to make sense of how the business processes would change, what they would need to change in their financial audits to make sure they're taking into account the right risks and so forth. Now, that project, although we got exposure to the oil and gas sector and understood a little bit more how it works and where are the risks, right? So, I don't know, for instance, it's funny, but when you look at inventory of an oil and gas company, one of the main risks is to figure out, well, how much oil can you still produce or get, right? Because that's really what is going to say if the company is going to go well or not. If your reserves are down tomorrow, or you don't have any way to get any oil, you're in big trouble, right? So it's a bit different from, let's say, a consumer products company or retail company, like, I don't know, somebody selling clothes, right? When you do the inventory at the end of the year for consumer goods, you go into the retail store and you count the shirts to make sure that there is the right number of shirts. Yeah. If you do an inventory at an oil and gas company, well, you count pipes and you count the pipes, you climb up the oil tanks to make sure they're at the right level, right? So you have to even go through special training for that. So that's, we learned a little bit about what differentiates the oil sector to maybe other sectors, but we were technically focused on SAP and we didn't go very deep into the oil and gas sector processes or specific regulations that they may have. That's something we didn't touch on.
But it was a good client because the client was, they required their auditors to be in the plants, the refineries, prior to being in audit. So between their oil and gas knowledge and our SAP knowledge, it was an awesome team.
With that, we need to end it. Please welcome them.
Really super fast, guys. So I know the rest of our riding class has to get out of here soon. One thing I wanted to bring up is that you guys, we've had 3 companies now speak. You should be putting links between some key words they're saying, or the order to cash process. They talked about the 3-way match process. Talks about security and segregation of duties. If you've ever been in one of Chris McBride's class, he will fit it in somewhere. They're talking about things,
appropriate.
Yeah. They're talking about things that our professors are talking about. So just kind of something to bring up that there is a connection. Again, October 1st, deadline for pretty much anything. If you want to sign up for that St. Jude's Hospital charity event, please come